learn something about stereotypes. You've never had the NAACP. And so I waited back that night, because you know, when you're traveling with Bernie Sanders, and you've been traveling a lot with Bernie Sanders, you don't always feel compelled to watch the speech that night. It's the same speech. And not only is it the same speech, it's like when a cover band performs Freebird. Everybody's just yelling out lines the whole time. They know when their lines are coming, they're getting ready to yell it out. And so, I did something strange that night, and I stayed to watch the speech. You see, they responded so well to me, I wanted to see how they responded to him. Specifically, I wanted to see if they responded to the same applause lines the same way. Bernie called for $15 minimum wage. Same response. Making sure we have health care for everybody. Same response. So moving through the speech, generally the same response. And I'm getting more anxious, not more relieved. And I realize I'm getting more anxious. Because you see, this is the spring of 2016. We've been watching unarmed black men after unarmed black men killed by some poorly trained or otherwise unprepared or just downright violent police officer again and again and again. And it was a lot to have to deal with that and then get back to the presidential, and they're raising kids, and you just kind of hold it together. And I realized I was going to lose it that night if the response was any more tender than it had been in Chicago. And the response was exactly the same. And I put my head out. I was so surprised. We're at Southwest Missouri State University. Literally 20% of the crowd appeared to be in the same hunting club. And as I put my head out the curtain just to look, and half of the men in deer hunting camouflage were clustered over on the left, were in their chairs with their fists in the air tall. And it just sort of took me aback, because again, life is great if you keep on learning, and I was learning something that night. I'd seen it once before when we were in Spartanburg, South Carolina, but I figured, you know, there's like a lot of tech people in Spartanburg and stuff now. I just figured it was like an off night. It wasn't the general population. This was the general population of the Ozarks. That was clear. And so I just kind of stood there, my mind racing, and I grabbed Bernie. The last thing you want to do with the septuagenarian is just left it all on the floor, give it over an hour speech, is get between him and a drink of water. But I grabbed Bernie's coat, and he kind of turned to me, because he's literally just rushing back. He has his routine. I was messing it up. And he said, what? I said, Bernie, did you hear that? He said, hear what? I said, the applause lines were exactly the same. Same intensity, even when you called for the police to stop killing unarmed. And he said, yeah, but I'm glad that you stayed to see that tonight. He said, that's the revolution in this revolution. That's the revolution in this revolution. That's the revolution that we as Democrats have been preparing for 50 years. That's what Martin Luther King was talking about in his letter from Birmingham jail when he engaged his prison guard and said, how much do you make? Oh, you should be fighting with us then, not fighting against us. That's the revolution that our young people are already leading. Look at how they live their lives. They don't care about skin color anymore or hair texture anymore than they care about hair color or eye color. And they understand, because they're the generation who's been raised since the human genome was sequenced, that one is not any more significant than the other in any way, except for the stuff that we throw at. My grandma is 100 years old. She would always explain to me in her vernacular way what a professor once made plain to me when I was in college. His name was Charles Hamilton. He was the first black tenured political scientist at Columbia University. his daughter would die on the plane with Ron Brown. When he was a young man, he co-authored a book called Black Power with Stokely Carmichael. He was if you ever open that book, you'll see a bunch of political science charts. You'll seem odd for Stokely Carmichael. He came from Professor. He taught Politics 101 to the first years at Columbia. It used to be the freshmen, but we changed that guy. And the last day of class, the tradition was you could ask the professor anything you wanted. He was a pretty stern, intimidating guy. And so I raised my hand. I said, Professor Hamilton, he said, yes, Mr. Giles. I said, why do we call this science? I've been here all semester. I've heard a lot of politics. I haven't seen much science. He said, honestly, I don't know. But I will venture to say this. It does have a lot in common with physics. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And something in motion tends to return to its original state. He said, this was, mind you, 1990. He had just come through the Jesse Jackson campaign, the David Dingson's campaign, and the Doug Mahler. You've been an advisor on that. And he said, Mr. Chavez, we tend to make a mistake in this country when it comes to race relations because we misremember the original state of our struggle. See, as Americans, we tend to remember what we've seen on the big screen or the small screen. So the furthest back we can remember, therefore, is Roots. Now you would say Django, 12 years a slave, or The Other Birth of a Nation. Either one, same point. So all of those depict the state of the struggle towards the end of slavery. We forget how it starts. Said, as you might recall, he referred to that great liberal Bible, Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. You might recall, I'm killing this mic because I'm not my big fan. He said, you might recall Howard Zinn talked about rebellion in Gloucester, Virginia in 1663. Some 300 years before, say, the March on Washington. He said that rebellion, two things to remember, young man. First of all, it was Irish indentured servants and African slaves together. He said, and secondly, the cause of the rebellion was an edict handed down from the king through the governor that said, in effect, and your status shall convey to your children. And your status shall convey to your children. In other words, black or white, from the beginning of the American experience, we've been willing to endure a lot so long as we could hope that our children might do better than we did. But when it becomes painfully clear that most of our children are likely to do no better than their parents, possibly worse, certainly no better than their parents' generation, possibly worse, all the lines that could divide us become less significant. And what becomes most important is banding together to make sure that our children will have better options. That's the revolution in this revolution. That's the opportunity in front of us as Marylanders right now. Our state is a rich state. We take pride in that. Our state has better schools than most states. We take pride in that too. But our state has a lot of places that are poor and getting poorer. And as parents, I know a lot of parents who are worried about their kids in the public schools. I've spent the last few years as I left the NAACP investing in tech companies, and I'm usually very small startups, growing these small companies into big companies. Some of them straight out of Baltimore. Some of them out of Silver Spring in DC. Many from the Silicon Valley. But one day I stumbled into Facebook. And the mantra at Facebook, which is a little scary, but I think instructive, is this is us at 1%. As great as Facebook is, they don't take anything for granted. And they have ambition to be much bigger than they are right now. And I would say, as great as Maryland is, this is us at 1%. Johns Hopkins, where I work as a mentor, I volunteer as a mentor for their startups, should be to health sciences what Stanford is to computer sciences. It is the greatest health sciences campus on the planet bar none. You have Under Armour just across the city. There's a lot of new companies coming in off that synergy, but man, we could drive so much more energy to that area that would enrich our state and create opportunities for our children. It's down in Prince George's County. There was a movie my son dragged me to. His mom and his sister had gone, and he was sort of offended they hadn't taken him. It's called Hidden Figures. It's about 3 black women who were scientists at NASA helped us get to the moon. Prince George's County is a hidden county. It has the greatest concentration of blacks in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And companies like Facebook say that they can't find black programmers. They're at 2 or 3%. Well, they could put a campus right in Prince George's County and change the numbers right away. In fact, I had that talk with one of their major competitors, one of the other beasts of Silicon Valley's, one of their top executives, and they're very interested. Come out here to Western Maryland. I can't tell you how proud I am of the activists here, some of whom I followed into a protest in Annapolis. There's some familiar faces in this room. Came to shutting down fracking. Talk about rebellions. I'm pretty sure that Hogan saw the writing on the wall. We got to stand up strong on pipelines too. But we also have a responsibility, whether it's wind energy, or it's building roads and bridges, to make sure not just for the children of people who may have been employed, say, in fracking, or have been employed historically in our building trades, or have been employed historically in mining, not just to make sure that we have pathways for the children, but we have pathways for them. Our state could be a beast in offshore wind energy. Our state has traffic problems in every county you go to, it seems like. Everybody's like, it's worse. And certainly whenever you start heading towards the centers of industry, everything slows down. We have a lot of work that needs to be done. And quite frankly, I know some people have given up on the idea of small farming in this country, but I don't think we should. If you really understood what happens to lettuce when it gets shipped out here from Salinas, California, you would stop eating it. It's virtually nutrition. It's a lot better sourcing from within 200 miles of any of things. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight. I'm happy to any thoughts, advice, questions.